Hello and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And in the midst of March Madness, there is still NFL stuff going on. And I know we're a couple days late on this, but we have reasons for doing this, why we're doing it. We're covering Deshaun Watson and his trade to the Cleveland Browns. And we're also going to cover what happens to Baker Mayfield. Because now with Cleveland bringing in a new quarterback, it's what happens to their old quarterback, which is the problem. So we're going to dive into that. Tim, without further ado, ready to go?
Let's run it.
All right. First, let's break down the Deshaun Watson saga as a whole before we get into the trade. For like the past season and a half, like rumors have been swirling around the NFL. Various teams were in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. For a long time, it was the Miami Dolphins, but they had been ruled out. Mike McDaniel had confirmed that Tua was the long-term quarterback. And then certain teams like from the NFC South, Carolina, New Orleans were finalists because they need quarterbacks. And Atlanta was like, well, shoot, if my division rivals are jumping in, I might as well join the fray. You know, Indianapolis was a potential suitor, except they weren't because they weren't going to trade in division, but they did need a quarterback until they traded for Matt Ryan. So the final winner was the Cleveland Browns, in which a massive trade where Cleveland acquired Deshaun Watson and a 2024 sixth-round pick for Houston's first rounder this year, next year, the year after that, and their fourth rounder this year, their third rounder next year, and their fourth rounder the year after that. So to recap, that is 6 picks, which include the 13th
firsts.
Yeah, 3 firsts, which includes the 13th overall and 107th overall this year. And with that, they rewarded Deshaun Watson with a 5-year, $230 million extension, all guaranteed money, which broke the record for the most guaranteed money by $80 million.
Not even close.
Yeah. So when it comes to the Browns, they had initially been ruled out of the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, but they had never stopped recruiting. And ultimately that persistence paid off as they landed their guy, and now they have their quarterback. How this impacts the Texans? Well, Davis Mills, it's your show.
They got a whole lot of picks to build some stuff around them.
Well, now they actually have a first-round pick because they didn't for a while. But, yeah, now you got Davis Mills running the show. He showed a little bit of what he could do last year. Now we'll see how the Texans build around their quarterback. But as far as the Browns go, they have Deshaun Watson. They handed him
they have no contract. Picks.
They have a lot less draft capital than they opened the offseason with. And now they have 2 quarterbacks because they didn't include their existing one in the trade. Baker Mayfield is still a member of the roster.
And a rather disgruntled member, to say the least, as well.
Oh, yes.
Disgruntled even before the Deshaun Watson news actually came out, because I feel like he felt a little bit kind of shafted or betrayed by the fact that they were trying to go after to get Deshaun Watson anyway to begin with, even when it came out that they had been sort of boxed out of the running. But lo and behold.
Well, they didn't really tell Baker they were doing it. Baker learned from an outside source that they were doing it. And then when Baker was like, hey, I'm your quarterback. And Cleveland was like, well, guess what? We're trying to get another one.
Now.
So, yeah. So then Baker wrote his goodbye letter, which was very genuine. Personally, for me, I think the Browns are doing Baker Mayfield incredibly dirty because the guy is essentially the Cleveland version of Tom Brady, because he did what like 25 to 30 other quarterbacks couldn't. Like
playoff.
Yeah, he took the Browns to not only the playoffs, but a playoff victory.
Win. Yeah.
A playoff win over the hated Pittsburgh Steelers. Like the last quarterback to win a playoff game for the Cleveland Browns was Bernie Kosar, which is like third. Hey, Bernie Kosar is a Miami Hurricanes legend. He won a
You know
national
what?
title for
I'm
the Canes
sure
in
he is,
1983.
but in terms of NFL quarterbacks, he's certainly never made himself a particular big name for himself, other than, of course, that fantastic stat that he kept up until Baker Mayfield this past
Hey, well,
two
Bernie
seasons
Kosar is a
ago.
Cleveland Browns legend, and now Baker, with winning that playoff game, has elevated
Should have
himself
been.
to that level. And
Until
then,
they kind of threw him to the side.
yeah, and then this last year, he tore his labrum in his non-throwing shoulder, and then
It
he
definitely affected his play a decent amount, though.
100% he was not the same. He decided to play through it, and apparently that was enough for Cleveland to go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Deshaun
I mean
Watson, you're our guy now.
it's definitely a pretty surprise move because I mean I would think you have a bit of a regression year and whatnot, which is tough, but I just was surprised that they decided that that was the best avenue for a guy that really was their savior for a little bit there. And when he was healthy, he wasn't that bad. You obviously saw some iffy
No,
things this year, but
absolutely not.
he's particularly serviceable for whatever team I guess we'll end up with him because we still don't know about that yet.
Yeah, as far as Baker Mayfield goes, he was an average to above average quarterback statistically every single year except for last year. And he, had a torn labrum in his shoulder, which is a very serious injury. But now the question was, once they traded for Deshaun Watson, what do you do with Baker Mayfield? Well, aside from Baker Mayfield, they cleaned out the quarterback room like completely. They traded Case Keenum to the Buffalo Bills for a 7th-round pick this year, and they signed Jacoby Brissett to be Deshaun Watson's backup. Okay, you got Baker. So what happens? Are you going to trade him to the Colts, which was the first potential destination? The Colts went and got Matt Ryan. All right, so what about the Falcons, who are now quarterbackless? They signed Marcus Mariota. All right. So where do you go now? What are the potential suitors? Seattle, who's stuck with Drew Lock and his strong arm. Yeah. Or, maybe Pittsburgh. I've heard if Baker
But they
Mayfield gets
just went
cut
and
outright.
but they just went and got their guy in Trubisky. So it's like the teams that are still avidly looking for a quarterback are certainly closing. And in my opinion, with the way that Seattle especially has gone with the route of sort of the fire sale and get everybody the heck out of there, I have a feeling that they're probably going to stick with Drew Lock rather than trying to give a contract to Baker and potentially see what they maybe can do in the draft next year. But I could be wrong. That's just sort of my inklings of what I feel like Seattle might end up doing.
Yeah, when it comes to the Seahawks, you can see what you have in Drew Lock. And as far as what happens to Baker, I have a take for you. What if the Browns just don't trade him? I think that is the most likely solution, that the Browns just don't trade him at all, at least this offseason. Because what I've heard is that teams are not willing to take Baker Mayfield's contract for, the skill set that he displayed last year. All right, fine. What if the Browns are using Baker Mayfield as a contingency plan for an impending Deshaun Watson suspension? Because even though he was acquitted of the various charges
we've seen this before.
Yes, we have seen this before with, for example, Ezekiel Elliott, who faced that, I believe, 6-game suspension.
Yep, it was 6.
Even though he was found guilty of absolutely nothing, the NFL still suspended him anyway. So due to the precedent that's set, the Browns are like, well, we have Baker and he should be relatively healthy. And then maybe at the trade deadline when, Deshaun Watson is ready to play, maybe then they deal Baker. But for the off season, I believe that come week 1 next year, Baker Mayfield will still be on the Cleveland Browns roster.
Yeah, and I mean, with the way that you bring up the concept of Deshaun's potential suspension and the way we've seen that happen before, it would make sense for them to try to keep that quarterback around to sort of, I guess, get whatever else you can out of him in those games that you really need them, and either potentially go for a deal, because you also don't know before the trade deadline in terms of during the NFL season, it's very possible that other teams might have a quarterback go down or find that things aren't working out for whoever they go with. So there could present more of a need at that point that there is now, to where they could be playing sort of the waiting game of seeing what the value that they could get for him then might be greater than what they can get now. So it might work out for them to play a little bit of that waiting game and see where his value rises and falls, especially depending on how he plays. If that were to happen, if he puts together a relatively solid first 6 games before Deshaun comes back, then it proves, hey, like, he may have had an iffy last season, but he's healthy now, or mostly healthy. He's back and playing pretty good football. That, of course, then improves his value even more.
Economics, supply and demand for quarterbacks.
You know it.
There will be
still
more
a business at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, there'll probably be more of a demand for a quarterback come the trade deadline next year with whatever happens in the NFL. The NFL is a wild place, so things could happen. And if the Browns hold on to Baker Mayfield, there will be a supply. We had waited to do this video just because we thought that there was going to be a Baker Mayfield trade right after they had traded for Deshaun Watson. I figured that
it was going to happen within the next couple of days, but then a lot of other teams solidified their quarterback options from other places. And then it's like, wow, okay, all of a sudden the pool of teams got a lot smaller. So it's like, well, it's looking like it's possible things might not happen in this offseason for him.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to think of what that might do to Baker or his relationship with the Browns as they head into next season, for him potentially to be the starter of those games. It'll be interesting to watch how that relationship plays out and how he feels about that.
Yeah, because Baker's already burned the bridge, or at least he attempted to, but the Browns are still
might still need him
capacity. So
how will he react to that? Will he do that particularly willingly or what? I don't know.
Who knows? Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, that whole saga, and a wild offseason for the Cleveland Browns and the NFL as a whole. It
has been a wild offseason.
What the future holds is to be determined. But I think that's all we got for this episode of Running the Table. We covered Deshaun Watson, we covered Baker Mayfield and the Browns. We have a ton of future content coming up. Baseball is right around the corner. March Madness, we have been covering the whole length of the way, which our last episode, the Elite Eight, really blew up, which
is very, very cool experience to see those numbers tick up in the day after.
Awesome to see, and we love the support. It means the world.
We appreciate every single one of those clicks.
We're going to keep going hard, and we're going to keep making content for you. But, you can watch us on YouTube, or you can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find podcasts in general. So until next time, we out.